What's up, board game people? It's time for another first for the channel. Today I'm trying my hand at a how to play featuring Phantom Epoch that will be relaunching on Kickstarter on June 13th, 2023. Enjoy. Let's take a deep dive into how to play Phantom Epoch. I'll go over the basics that you'll need to know to get started, and anything else can be easily located in the rulebook. Millennia ago, a spacefaring species known as the Vanished united the inhabited planets of the galaxy. The Gralix, the clever Slinks, the adaptable humans lived in unity, guided by this ancient nation, until it disappeared without a trace. The vanished starships gone, travel between the planets became impossible, leaving many stranded light years from their home planets with no way to return. Rumors spread that the world's elites must have a way to travel or communicate between planets, but if it exists, the common people have never been given access to it. Generations have come and gone, and the only remaining signs of the Vanished are bits and pieces of their technology, which no one has been able to replicate. It did not take long after their disappearance for wars to break out over their abandoned treasures, the most abundant of which are known as nova cells, extremely small sources of incredible energy that have many applications. Now, a mysterious threat to the galaxy approaches, and a small team has been selected to follow in the Vanished footsteps to repel it. Phantom Epoch is a 1-to-4 player cooperative game. If you choose to play solo, you must play at least 2 characters. The game is very manageable playing multiple characters at once, so fear not. Characters are created at the beginning of the game, and a max of 1 of each class is allowed in your party at a time. To create a character, you'll choose a class from the choice of Healer, Rogue, Ranger, or Warrior. Open the class's tuck box and grab the class board, attachment cards, and character action cards. Take a look over your action cards and return the 4 cards with the skill point cost to the tuck box for now. If you chose Healer, you'll also have a unique item, the medical kit. Select a species from the choice of Slink, Grallic, or Human. Take the corresponding species card and place it on your character board. Choose a miniature to represent your character. Grab a tracking base and a plus 10 HP disc. Fill out a character sheet for your character, and they're ready for the adventure ahead. Make as many characters as you like. People or characters can drop in and out between missions. You can just never have more than 1 character of each class in your party at a time. Phantom Epoch will send you and your team on missions that stretch across the galaxy. The missions are created on maps, created by using 2 spiral-bound map books combined into a single larger map. The mission text is also displayed in the map books, and you'll work through one section of the mission at a time. You'll often see things like stop reading until X, Y, or Z. This helps to keep specific mission rules, events, adversaries, and objectives manageable. Mission setup can seem a bit daunting just looking at the rulebook, but once you've done it once or twice, mission setup becomes second nature and you can be set up and playing in minutes. When instructed to do so, you'll lay out the map books side by side. Read the mission introduction from the map book, taking note of the difficulty level right under the mission's title. This difficulty level will determine the difficulty level of the adversaries you will face during this mission. Next, you're going to place all the orb tokens on the indicated spots, treasure tokens, and other tokens that may be on the map. If an orb or treasure token has a number by it, it's a campaign orb or treasure and can only be collected once. If it's already been collected on a previous run of a mission, place the inactive orb side up, and do not place a treasure token on an already collected campaign treasure. Now you'll gather the adversary description cards for each regular adversary shown on the map and place them to the side with the adversary's difficulty level matching the level's difficulty face up. If there's a boss, grab the matching boss board and place it near the map as well. Next, we grab the adversary species action cards and the adversary's class action cards that correspond with the adversaries that we set out and set them next to the adversary description cards. If there's a boss, grab the boss's action cards and place them next to the boss board. Now we look at the map and find where the adversary should be placed. There will be numbers next to each adversary indicating how many characters need to be present for them to spawn, 2 to 4, 3 to 4, or 4. Only place standees for the adversaries that should spawn according to your team size. Make sure and attach an HP tracking disc and a plus 10 HP tracker to their bases, and if possible, use a different color for each adversary of a specific type. Next, we create the event deck. Shuffle the round 1 to 5 event deck and the round 6 plus deck separately. Draw 5 cards from the round 1 to 5 deck, then place them top down on top of the round 6 plus event deck. Set the remaining 1 to 5 event cards aside or put them in the box. Each character should choose 10 character action cards to bring with them on the mission. If this is your first few missions, you may only have 10, so bring them all. Equip and charge any equipment and attachments you may have for your characters. You can bring as much equipment as you like, but you can only equip and charge attachments or equipment during the beginning of the mission or during a rest turn. Equip your character by placing the correct card on the correct spots on the character board. Any unequipped equipment or attachments should be set in the character's play area and not on the character board. To charge an equipment piece, place a Nova Cell in the Nova Cell charge slot of the card. You can only charge a card if you have the necessary Nova Cells. You can choose 2 items to bring with you on your missions. Items can only be equipped or removed between missions, not during a rest. Place your character miniatures on the entry points of the map, read the mission start text, and it's time to begin your mission. To walk through how rounds play and to continue on to how to play the game, I'll be using the tutorial mission and the first mission as an example to avoid any spoilers. When on a mission, the game is divided into rounds. Each round flows through various steps, allowing every character and adversary to act, and then sometimes concludes with an end-of-round event, and kicks off the next round. The round flow continues until a success or failure condition is reached for the mission. To start a round, you'll roll the decision dice. This dice roll will help to determine any decisions throughout the game. The decision die has 3 components: a color, a primary cardinal direction, and a secondary cardinal direction. This dice might help to determine which part of an adversary action card to use, who the target of an adversary is, or what direction it should use when making a decision. The color speaks for itself. Each face has a primary and secondary directions engraved in a color: dark blue, light blue, red, or yellow. Each size also has a larger letter corresponding to a cardinal direction: north, south, east, or west. This is the primary direction, and a small letter that denotes the secondary direction. After the decision die is rolled, you draw and perform an event card from your deck. If the event refers to a mission event or event adversary, check the mission text for the active mission event or adversary event and do what it says. Otherwise, follow the instructions on the card for that round. Next, you'll choose whether each of your team's characters will select action cards or perform a rest for the turn. A character can only rest if they have discarded action cards and they did not rest the turn before. A resting character's initiative is considered a 1, and they cannot play action cards for the round. They recover all discarded character action cards back into their hand, remove any detrimental conditions at the start of their rest prior to any effects taking place. During a rest, you can equip or unequip or recharge any equipment or attachments. You can shift your Nova Cells around your equipment and attachments as you like. And you can use any item cards you brought with you for the mission. If a character chooses not to rest, they select action cards. You can choose any amount of action cards you'd like to play on your turn, as long as you choose at least one, and the total AP value of the actions you've selected does not exceed the maximum AP value on your character's species card. Place the chosen actions face down in your play area. While you're selecting your cards, you cannot discuss with other players your specific actions. You can talk to them about your plan in general terms, like "I'm going to attack that slink archer," or "I'm going to activate the orb." But you can't say things like "I'm going to shield slam the slink archer" and then do a full guard. It's on the honor system, but much more fun if you just keep it simple. After all character action cards are chosen for the round, all characters flip over their action cards, revealing them at the same time. Next, draw the adversary's action cards. You draw the action cards for each adversary type each round, one for their species and one for their class. Then you'll determine the initiative for all characters and adversary types. You do this by adding the total AP of their actions for the round and applying any modifiers you might have from gear and such. For regular adversaries, you add the AP on their species card to the AP on the class card that matches their colored health tracker. After you have initiatives, play begins from the lowest initiative and continues until you reach the highest. If there's a tie between 2 characters and an adversary for initiative, the character goes first. If there's a tie between 2 characters, you choose who acts first. If 2 adversaries of the same type are tied, use the order they appear on the class action card as their order. If there are ties between 2 different types of adversaries, the color on the decision die is used to determine who goes first. Character turns and adversary turns differ slightly. Let's go over the basic character turn quickly. First, you remove any temporary effects. Next, you apply any new effects such as damage from bleeding. Then you play your action cards one at a time, completing or skipping all actions on the card before moving to another. When you complete an action card, it's moved to the character's discard pile unless it has a temporary or persistent effect on it. Finally, at the end of their turn, discard any action cards they chose not to play. After everyone has had their turn, discard all adversary action cards that were used in the round. If there are any effects that reference the end of the round, such as an event, perform them now. Rinse and repeat until you reach a success or fail condition for your mission. Missions can end in one of two ways, success or failure. If you fail to complete a non-optional objective, or all characters are defeated, the mission ends in failure. Any remaining characters are evacuated back to the Phantom Epoch for recovery, and any rewards from campaign orbs or campaign treasures you retrieved before the mission failure are yours to keep. You can always reattempt failed missions. A successful mission ends at the end of the round in which the final objective is complete. That means any remaining adversaries can still complete their turns, and your characters have the remainder of the turn to retrieve or activate any orbs, treasure, or nova cells that might be laying around. Once you've reached the "Congratulations" text, you know the mission was a success. After you complete a mission, successful or not, you return to the Phantom Epoch where you can do a number of different things, including spending your skill points, shopping, changing characters, performing expeditions, or any number of other activities. We'll get to some of those a bit later, but for now let's stick to the missions. During a round, each character can take a variety of actions during their turns, from moving, to interacting with the environment and items, to attacking, looting, healing, even teleporting in some situations. Let's go over the basics of gameplay, and then we can get down to a few of the more complex concepts. So your most basic action is a move. Every character needs to be able to traverse the battlefield, and there are a few different ways to make a move here. You will likely have access to some move action cards in your action deck. These cards have an MP or movement point value listed on them, such as move 4 or move 2. This directly translates to the amount of spaces your character can move. You can split your movement points between back-to-back movement actions, but as soon as you take a non-movement action, your pool of saved movement points is discarded. So you can move 3 on a 4 MP action card, then move 3 more spaces using the leftover movement point and another 2 MP action. But you cannot play a 4 MP action card, move 3 spaces, then attack and try to use that one remaining point. That movement point is forfeit. Movement actions aren't your only source of movement points. You can convert any action card to MP equal to the AP value of the card. There's no limit to how many action cards you can convert in a turn. You can move freely through other characters, but not through adversaries in most cases. If the character is invisible or the adversary is invisible, you can move through them. There are also some action cards that will allow you to move through an adversary in specific situations. You can never move through walls. Along with move actions, some characters will have a leap action. Leaps behave much the same way as a move, with a few distinctions. The value of a leap is still considered to be MP for the purpose of any actions or equipment that refer to movement points. MP from leap actions may not be split between back-to-back leap actions. Move modifiers on equipment do not affect leap actions. Entering a difficult terrain space only takes 1 MP. We'll talk more about different types of terrain here in a bit. With a leap action, it's possible to move through objects, orbs, lava, or water spaces, and adversaries. The effects that are triggered by entering certain spaces, such as hazards or an adversary round action, only trigger in the space that the leap ends in. An orb may be activated if a character ends their turn in a space adjacent to an orb. If an orb is activated, its effect triggers before any other character or adversary takes their turn. Once activated and the effect is resolved, the orb is flipped to the inactive side. You can retrieve nova cells by ending a character's turn on or adjacent to nova cells. Treasure is looted exactly the same way. Make sure you remove the token once it's been looted, and if there is a number next to it, remember it's campaign treasure and can only be looted once. The number corresponds to an entry in the extras book. You should go and read that. There are characters that by some means can teleport. To teleport, remove the character from their starting space, and they're placed back on an empty space. You cannot teleport through or to the other side of a closed door. Another possible action is a heal. Healing restores the HP of a figure by the given value up to its maximum HP. If there isn't a range value on the heal action, then its range is 1. If health points are restored by a heal action, the healed character receives a bandage token. If the character is already at max HP, they don't take a bandage token. And any action of an effect that restores HP without a specific heal action does not accrue a bandage token. Once a character's bandage token slots are full, they can no longer be healed. The last action, the really fun one, is attacking. Before we get to attacking, there are a few integral concepts you need to understand, so let's look at those first. Range is a fairly simple concept. Range is the fewest number of spaces you can count between you and your target. If there's a wall between the attacker and its target, it's out of range. There's some range modifiers you might pick up along the way, such as equipment or attachments, and these are added to the character's base range found on their class board, or in the case of an adversary, on their description card. Line of sight is one of the key concepts that you need to understand for combat in Phantom Epoch. To draw line of sight from a figure to its target, you draw an imaginary line from any vertex of the attacker's space to a different vertex of the target space, meaning you can't just draw a line from the top of one space to the top of another. For characters, you usually only need line of sight for ranged attacks, but for adversaries, line of sight can also help determine their target. Line of sight can be drawn through water and lava, but never through walls. Line of sight can be drawn through allies, enemies, obstacles, and hazards. If a line of sight is drawn along the edge of a space, it counts as going through that space. If line of sight is drawn along an edge that has objects on either side, the accuracy dice must be rolled for both objects. The character chooses which object to roll the die for first, but adversaries use the decision die. Adversary line of sight is drawn much the same as character's line of sight, with a few exceptions. For an adversary, line of sight is drawn through as few objects or figures as possible. If there are multiple lines of sight, prioritize the line that goes through as few allies as possible. If you're still reaching a tie, prioritize the one going through as few indestructible objects, and if all else fails, utilize the decision dice. There's several different types of attacks: melee, ranged, and multi-target. You never need to roll an accuracy dice for a melee attack, but there are times it must be rolled for a ranged attack. Any attack performed on an adjacent enemy is considered a melee attack. Any attack on a target that is 2 or more spaces away is a ranged attack and requires a valid line of sight to complete. Unless otherwise specified, if an attack has a target and a number on it, it is a multi-attack. You roll each attack as a separate action, targeting a different enemy or object for each attack. But just because it says target 3 doesn't mean you have to attack 3 targets, but you cannot attack the same target twice with a multi-attack. Attacking follows a flow much like a round does. To attack, first you must declare your target. It could be an enemy or a destructible object in range and within a line of sight. Roll your attack dice. You get to choose which attack dice to roll when you make your attack. An adversary will always roll the basic attack dice unless their action card says otherwise. If you fumble, the attack is over. Don't continue in the attack flow. If the result is a critical strike, its value is treated as a 3 when calculating attack value. Next, you will calculate your attack value. If there are any attack modifiers, you'll add or subtract them as necessary from your attack die roll. This is your attack value. If your attack is not ranged, or if you rolled a critical strike, you can skip ahead to the next step. If you're doing a ranged attack and did not crit, you must roll an accuracy dice for each object or figure that intersects the line of sight and is not directly adjacent to the attacker. Start from the attacker and roll for each figure or object necessary until you reach the target. You don't roll for the target itself. If your accuracy roll comes up a miss, the attack is over and it misses the intended target and all other objects in line of sight. If you roll a block, whatever figure or object the block was rolled on becomes the new target of the attack, even if it's an ally. If you roll a success, the attack continues on to the next figure or object, or it hits its target. Next, we have to calculate the target's guard value. To do this, add together all applicable sources of guard from cards, equipment, adversary description cards, etc. If the guard value is above 0, apply any associated pierce from the attack to the guard value. If a critical strike was rolled, the entire guard value is pierced. Next, we apply the damage. Subtract the guard value from the attack value to a minimum of 0. The result is the total damage dealt. A vulnerable target may have a negative guard value. This increases the damage from the attack. Any abilities that would affect damage are calculated after applying guard value. Take your final damage number and apply it to the target by lowering its HP equal to the total damage. If the target is a destructible object, reduce its state by 1 from intact to damage or from damage to destroyed. Finally, if the attack was successful, apply any conditions that were associated with the attack. Again, attack action cards are not your only way to attack. You can convert any action card to an attack with a base value of 0. No other attack actions can be performed on a turn where you convert another action card to an attack action. So now we know how to attack the baddies. Let's look at what happens when they act back. One important fact to understand is that Adversary considers all characters to be enemies, and in some missions, other adversary types may also be considered enemies. Adversaries have a quick turn flow to follow. First, apply new effects that take place at the beginning of a turn, such as damage from bleeding. Determine their primary target. Play the species action card on their adversary species action card, and then play the class action from their adversary class action card that corresponds to the color of their tracker. The first part of an adversary attacking is determining their primary target. There's a simple flow you can run through to do this. First choice would be the closest enemy in range and in line of sight. If this doesn't apply, next would be the enemy that takes the fewest MP to move within range and line of sight of to attack. If there's a tie at either of these two steps, first you go to the enemy that does not require moving through a hazard to be in range to attack, or if all else fails, reference the decision die. If you still don't have a target, you proceed down the chart. The next target would be the closest destructible object blocking a path that would put you closest to the enemy within range. There may be multiple destructible objects. Choose the path with the least. Finally, if there's no valid target, the adversary will not move or perform actions that require a primary target. There are tiebreakers here too. Reference the flowchart in the rulebook if you have any questions. Unless otherwise stated, an adversary will always attempt to move as close as their maximum range to the primary target. If an adversary's action is a heal, they'll choose the ally with the highest damage to receive their healing. If it's granting a beneficial condition, the adversary or the closest ally without the condition receives the condition. They always give benefits to themselves first. How selfish. Adversaries can convert actions to movement points. Convert any actions that do not have move, leap, or teleport on them if one or more actions cannot be completed due to the primary target not being in range or line of sight. Never convert an action that has a round effect on it, even if additional effects on the card cannot be performed. An adversary's attack is handled in the same way as a character's. Teleportation is the same for an adversary as a character. Healing is also the same, with the caveat that adversaries do not receive bandage tokens. If you are instructed to place a new adversary during a mission, you'll follow the same steps you took to place them during setup. If the indicated space is occupied, place them in the nearest empty space. Use the decision die if there are multiple nearest spaces. Adversaries are defeated when their health reaches 0. Remove them from the map and discard any of their condition cards. If this was the last adversary of its type, also discard its action cards. Place Nova cells on the space where they died equal to the stars of their difficulty rating, unless the adversary was placed on the board by an event card. It's likely that you'll experience character defeat during the course of the campaign. Some missions in Phantom Epoch can prove quite challenging. Defeat is not the end though. If a character is reduced to 0 HP, they are defeated. The character is removed from the map, any conditions are removed from the character, and temporary or persistent effects are discarded. Their HP is fully recovered, and you should recover their discarded action cards. This character is evacuated to the Phantom Epoch and is no longer a part of the mission. Bosses have some extra rules that shape how they play, and you can read up about them in the rulebook. They scale based off party size, their initiative calculation is a bit different, they drop way more Nova cells, and they have inherent abilities. You get the idea. I alluded to various things you could do between missions. Let's take a look at a few of them. Your ship has an upgrade board. You can unlock new areas of the ship, granting new bonuses and options for your team. Aboard your ship, you can spend SP to unlock action cards for your characters. Each action card has a skill point cost printed on it. To unlock a new action, you subtract the SP cost from the available SP on your character sheet. SP purchases are non-refundable. Make sure and note any action cards purchased on your character sheet. You can change characters while aboard. You can also change items, attachments, and equipment, and exchange gear between characters. You can shop while on the Phantom Epoch. This is your way to spend off some of those Nova cells. Shopping is only available if the last mission you took on had a planet name in the title. You can only purchase equipment from the last planet visited, and the available equipment is determined by the team's fame on that planet. Equipment has 3 different tiers of fame required. The back of the equipment card has a number indicating the required fame. To buy equipment, remove Nova cells from a character's play area equal to the cost and return them to the supply. Equipment requiring Nova cell charges does not come with a charge. You can sell equipment for half of its cost, rounded down, and it can be sold on any planet. You can also dismantle attachments for a number of Nova cells equal to its tier. You can perform expeditions during your time on the Phantom Epoch as well. Expeditions are a quick way to explore planets searching for treasure and fame. Expeditions come in 2 flavors, story and planet expeditions. They usually have you read some text, choose an action to take, and then read the opposite side of the card to determine the results. All ship-based activities are gone over in much more detail inside the rulebook. So the last thing I want to go over are the different types of terrain, hazards, and objects you'll encounter during your missions. First, there are several types of objects and terrains printed on the map that you should be aware of. Each space contained within a border is considered its own terrain, hazard, or object space. There are 2 types of objects, destructible and indestructible. Objects surrounded by a dark blue border are destructible objects. They have 3 states, intact, damaged, or destroyed. Each time a destructible object is damaged, it's reduced by a single state. There are tokens to represent objects that are damaged or destroyed. Objects surrounded in light blue borders are indestructible. Indestructible and destructible objects both share similar properties. You cannot enter any space with an object, so they can't be moved through. You can't leap over them. All objects intersect line of sight. Doors are indicated by a closed door icon printed on their space, and once a door is opened, an open door token should be placed on them. Hazards are spaces or tokens with a red border on them, and they have detrimental effects when a figure enters them. They come in 3 different versions, all with their own effects: fire, poison, and traps. Lava and water on a map will be denoted by a dotted black border. You cannot move or leap into water or lava. You can leap over them, and line of sight does not intersect these spaces. Walls are denoted by a black solid border on the maps. Alright, that's pretty much everything I dare fit in a single video about the game. If you still have some questions, please ask away in the comments or the Kickstarter page. If you're watching this video trying to learn the game, make sure and reference the rulebook if you run into any problems. Hopefully this video was helpful and will help get your adventures off the ground and out exploring the galaxy. If you appreciate this type of board game content, be sure and subscribe and hit that bell to help our channel grow. If you have any suggestions on how I could improve how to plays in the future, let me know in the comments. I'm all ears. Thank you to everyone watching, commenting, and supporting the channel on Patreon. Have a great week, and have fun playing Phantom Epoch.